Please read Revelation chapter 4. After Jesus takes care of the family business, John is called to come up. He finds himself in the midst of God's throne room. What he sees is overwhelming to his senses, and he describes as much as his eyes can comprehend. He sees God's throne and the thrones of 24 elders who are positioned around God's throne. He sees fire, lightning, thunder, and living creatures flying around. There is praise and worship like he's never heard or seen before. The closest he's ever come to such brilliance was on the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew 17:1. Now, I noticed that John refers to God in an odd way in this chapter. He refers to him as the one who sits on the throne. Why doesn't he just assume that what he was seeing was God? Probably because it's a well-known fact actually, that no one can see God's face and live, at least no flesh. So here John was face to face with someone sitting on the throne. Was he having a conflict in his mind? If this is God on the throne, I should be dead. He was right. Isaiah had the same experience when he was taken into the presence of God. And he saw and heard basically the same thing: the creatures, the voice of thunder, the brilliance. This is what Isaiah said. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on the throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out. And the house was filled with smoke. So I said, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Now here's what John saw. Before the throne, there was a sea of glass, like crystal, and in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf, the third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like an eagle, a flying eagle. The 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, they were full of eyes around and within. And they did not rest day or night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Now, many times we assume that whenever we read in the scriptures about otherworldly creatures and unexplainable goings on, that these things are symbolic. And that may be true in some cases. However, why does God, the Creator, have to stay within the limits of our finite minds? Isn't he free to create whatever kind of creature he wants around his throne? Just because we've not seen them before does not mean they have to be symbolic or don't exist. John saw living creatures like Isaiah did, praising and honoring God. He saw 24 elders, humans, around God's throne. We know they're humans because when Jesus' disciples asked what they would get for having left all to follow him in Matthew 19, he said that they would sit on 12 thrones in heaven with him. We should be able to safely assume then that those are the thrones that John sees. Perhaps the other 12 that John sees are the Old Testament followers, or the 12 tribes of Israel, or Abraham, or David, Hezekiah, or those who just faithfully followed God until the end of their life on earth. The interesting point is not who is sitting on the thrones around the throne of God, but why. Think about it. If they are around him, then some of them, or maybe even all of them, are facing him. They would be able to interact with him, and he would be able to interact with them always. There's absolutely no logical reason for God, the Creator, to be in this kind of relationship with us, except that he wants to be. When my grandkids were age 1, 2, and 3, and I would come over for a visit, we had this ritual of reading books. We'd grab a bunch of books off the shelves, and I would sit down in the recliner, and David, who was 3, would be on one knee. Paul, who was 2, would be on the other knee. And Sarah, 1, would sit in the middle. And this worked out pretty good because she really didn't understand the words or anything I was reading, but she was just happy to be close and secure between her brothers. And she would just laugh every time I just turned the page. And Paul, he loved to look at the pictures and then point out the words and items on the page. He was actually reading at 2.5. And he would just love when I would give him my approval. Good job, Paul, or wow, you're really smart. And David just wanted to be able to read. He noticed each word on the whole time, and he was reading and then memorizing where everything was on the page so he could do it by himself later. And then there I was. I was loving the whole experience. It was physically uncomfortable and intellectually unstimulating, but I would not have traded it for the world. There's absolutely no logical reason for me to be in this kind of relationship with them, except I wanted to be. So chapter 4 is entirely devoted to describing what most readers agree is heaven, namely the throne room, a place that has been visited at times by those most fortunate, but yet enjoys a certain exclusivity within the heavenly realm. It seems to be where heavenly business is conducted. It is also where God shows us his unfathomable acknowledgement of relationship with his creation, humankind, made in his image.